Ready to go? Mm-hmm. Welcome back, YouTubers. This is Inland Northwest Native News. I'm your host, Jeff Ferguson.
And I'm your co-host, Margot Hill.
All right. Welcome back. It's a great day to be Indigenous. Another Monday. And yes, we are happy and honored to be here. We hope you had a good weekend. And we have some pretty good stories. They're not earth-shattering, but there's some pretty good stuff.
Hey, we're springing forward, and it's time to get to some news.
Yeah, it is time. So if you've never been here before, we'd like to thank you for joining us. We're covering news and events for 11 tribes of the Inland Northwest on a local, regional, and national level, as far east as the Blackfeet, as far west as the Colvilles, down south to the Umatilla, Warm Springs, and up north to the Kootenai of Idaho and Kalispel. So yeah, and kind of everybody in between. So we're based out of Spokane, and we're doing this Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 8 a.m. to 8:30. So if you'd like to be sure to check out each and every one of our morning shows, be sure to like, subscribe, and click the little bell that pops up.
And if you have story ideas, please write in, let us know. You can like and subscribe. We can see your responses, and people have been suggesting stories to us, and we get them on the air. If there's people you think we should interview, then we try to do that.
All right. So we have some updates, but before we get to that, we would like to do some quick shout-outs. Quick shout-out to Jerry Crowshoe. Thanks for tuning in, buddy. We also have Cindy Santee, Hugh Waltman, Don Marie J, and Al Pinkham. Al Pinkham on the Yakama res. I don't know that we did a shout out to Al, but it's long overdue if we hadn't. So thanks for checking us out, and we appreciate you tuning in. And we hope you're all doing well and staying safe and healthy. So anyhow, moving right along, we have an update from Irv, our Coeur d'Alene elder that chimes in, lets us know, keeps us up to date on COVID. He says national COVID infections as of March 14th, 38,034, lowest in 5 months. That's awesome. And then he also tells us that we should be receiving our $1,400 payments, COVID payments, deposited on the 17th. So that's right around the corner. All right. So anyhow, also we had one of our loyal followers and subscribers, Danielle Robinson. We shout out to Danielle. We got your message. I got your message. Well, in the absence of Margot, while she was out and about, we just want to let you know I read your message. I lost your message. It got buried very quickly. But to that, I wanted to let you know we're there's just two of us here, so I couldn't really grab anybody to pull them in to co-host. I'd really like to have somebody to help out doing that, but we're not quite there yet. And I would like to set up somebody though that if they wanted to do a co-host, they wanted to fill in for you or
I've got buddies out there on Cemetery Road, maybe Verla Crowshoe.
Right.
You can come on in and co-host here. I'm actually going to be traveling next week.
Yeah, so we'll be looking for someone to fill in for Margot.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll see if we can get Irv in here.
Yeah.
So anyhow, let's see. So anyhow, we better keep moving along. We're down to 25 minutes or so. First story we have up here. Let's see if I can pull up the graphic on it. U of A.
So the University of Arizona is set to digitize over 6,000 recordings of Native American oral history. And so this comes to us from Steve Goldstein. And, as researchers have been learning for decades, digging into history can be more challenging when elements include newspapers, analog tapes, and because of the aging, can be rough on them, rendering them brittle and sometimes unusable. So digitizing is a priority, and that's an important step that will be taken for the oral histories of Native Americans that were recorded over the 60s and 70s. thanks to a grant from the Doris Duke Charitable Foundation. The University of Arizona and 6 other institutions will work on getting more than 6,500 recordings digitized.
That's cool. That's a lot of work, man. That story came to us out of Fronteras, and we really appreciate that. It's a great resource. I saw a ton of really cool stories. They had a lot of stuff covering Southwest tribes. Fronterasdesk.org. We'll leave the links to this story and all of the stories in the comment section below. But yeah, these guys are researching and digitizing.
Jeff, we have that same problem at all of our tribes. Our grandmothers and our Silas, our grandfathers, were working to record some history and stories, and we have it on reel-to-reel and some of these technologies that, are you laughing?
8-track tape.
8-track tape. I had an 8-track tape showing you how old when I was a little tiny baby or something in a previous lifetime. No, 8-track tape. You threw me off with that 8-track tape. I had a Dolly Parton, "Love Is Like a Butterfly" or something. 8-track tape. Tortured all my cousins with it. But yeah, Jeff, all of our tribes, we have recordings on cassette tape. You probably had a mixtape on the cassette tapes, but it's time to get them digitized, preserve that knowledge.
All right. Brenda Cates chimes in. Yeah, get Verla.
That's one vote for Verla.
One vote for Verla. All right. So, moving right along, you're right, archives, I know out of the Spokane res, we had some flooding that did some damage to some of our stuff. And so, if you guys can, I can encourage, I know there is money out there to get some of the digitizing done. It's a long, tedious process to get all of it done. Sometimes it's thousands, tens of thousands of photographs and audio recordings, hundreds and thousands of hours. Hundreds and thousands, maybe not hundreds of thousands, but hundreds and thousands of hours. So yeah, that would definitely be something worth doing if you guys can get a little bit of grant money going for that. So anyhow, moving right along, we have salmons, dams, and Northwest in transition. This is
this will be an event with panelists. Anyone on or off Facebook, you can register for the event. Panelists will live chat with viewers. This is a virtual event. Again, can be viewed on Facebook and Instagram. Do you know a little more about that, Jeff?
I do not.
Okay, it's Thursday, March 18th at 6 to 7:30 p.m. Again, it's going to be about an hour and a half. But salmons, dams, and Northwest in transition. So there's, looking at that, there's lots of issues coming up with local dams, and we're trying to, get prepared and look at some of the information. So yeah.
Yeah, this one coming up March 18th, 6 p.m. to 7:30. I would encourage you to check it out if you're interested in that kind of thing. So this is going to give us kind of a different perspective. This was actually brought to us by backcountry hunters and anglers. So this is a different angle on a lot of this stuff. Removing the dams is going to help restore recreational fishing. And, of course, with the salmon along comes more wildlife. Bears, they like the salmon. And then it also helps to nourish, the land, after they spawn. All of that helps to nourish the trees.
I was trying to pull that up, see who was on that panel, but that's not coming.
Yeah, I couldn't see on there anybody on there, but it'd be interesting to see and weigh the perspectives to see how those guys are going to feel about this. I'm sure the fishermen, the anglers are all going to be for it, and I don't see why any backpackers would be against it. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see. And that, moving right along, moves us into our next story, and this is our buddy down here on the Snake River. We have fate of Republican Mike Simpson's plan to remove Snake River dams lies with Democrats and Biden infrastructure package. This story by Orion Donovan Smith out of the Spokesman Review, March 13th, 2021, Washington. The first time someone approached Representative Mike Simpson with the idea of breaching dams on the Snake River to save Idaho's salmon, he started laughing. I thought, that's just crazy, Simpson recalled. I said at the time, you need to do everything you can to try to restore salmon runs, every alternative, before you look at taking out dams. That was about 25 years ago when the Republican lawmaker was serving as Speaker of the Idaho House of Representatives. Over more than 2 decades since then, he was elected to represent the eastern half of the state in Congress. Simpson gradually came to what he describes as a clear-eyed conclusion. The reality, he said in an interview with the Spokesman Review, is we've tried everything else. After 3 years and more than 300 meetings with stakeholders in the region, Simpson unveiled a proposal February 6 to end the decades-long salmon wars between tribes, farmers, conservationists, businesses, and electrical utilities over the fish and the dams that threaten their continued existence. While reactions from the region's congressional Democrats have so far been lukewarm, with key senators calling for more deliberation, Simpson insists there is no time for further delays. In a curious set of political circumstances, the veteran GOP lawmaker said planning to hitch his wagon to a multi-trillion-dollar infrastructure package President Joe Biden and his allies plan to move forward in a matter of weeks. Simpson's plan clearly banks on a big federal infrastructure package, says Justin Hayes, executive director of the Idaho Conservation League. The region has gotten together and talked about this for years, but the region has never had the resources to do this. Never has the region said, let's go find $33.5 billion. Simpson's proposal outlines $33.5 billion in federal spending to breach 4 dams on the lower Snake River in 2030, removing earthen berms to restore the river's flow and to replace the transportation, irrigation, and power generation the dams provide. It's the first proposal that looks at the big picture, Simpson said, not just the question of take out the dams or don't take out the dams, but if you take out dams, what are your consequences? We're the first to admit those dams are valuable, and so if you're going to take them out, how are you going to make the stakeholders whole? So those are all very good questions. This sounds like a very comprehensive plan. It's more than just the dam removal. It's about the salmon. It's about transportation. It's about a lot of different things. And it sounds like he really laid this out. We've been following this story. There's kind of a lot to it, and they're trying to roll it into Biden's plan. So, yeah, what do you think about that as a transportation planning specialist?
So there are a number of dams that I believe that have been targeted that make the most sense. They have the necessary habitat, and they're not creating a lot of, as far as hydropower, not creating a lot of wattage that folks are going to lose out on. But the ecosystem is primed for that salmon, so there's a whole salmon run that can be restored. So, shout out to the Mike Simpson. He is, that's really leadership across party lines to just say, hey, I'm going to help make this happen. And if we can do that, if we can get those appropriations, now's the time. We've been down on the Snake River, Jeff, on the flotilla. We've seen, hundreds of people show up to support this effort. Mostly grassroots, mostly environmentalists. But now's the time to make it happen.
Yeah, now is the time. This is the place, and we are the ones. All right, yeah. So that is Mike Simpson's plan, and hopefully he can get a way to roll it into Biden's package. It's $33.5 billion. It's a lot of money. It's got enough time to make it work, though. It sounds like 2030. That's 9 years out.
And don't even get me started about make people whole. We've been without salmon for 80 years now. Oh my gosh.
But who's counting?
Yeah, it devastated our culture, our economy. Yes, we get power, but unfortunately, it's been at a huge loss to tribes along the rivers.
Well, that's funny you bring that up. So there's a lot. We talk about being whole, and I know that they were selling power as far away from Grand Coulee as Chicago. That's a long ways to be shipping power, and or sending power. And power, as you know, it kind of deteriorates the further that you send it. So for them to be able to do that with these dams. Irv chimes in here. He tells us U.S. Republican Kathy Morris McRogers, a Republican representative out of Washington State, on March 3rd sponsored legislation to modernize America's hydropower licensing process and to promote next-generation hydropower projects. So, next-generation hydropower projects. That sounds like more dams. All right. Well, we have a fight going here.
Yeah.
We got Republicans who want to remove dams and Republicans that want to put them in.
So Jeff, there are farmers down in the Tri-Cities and across Idaho. They also make money off of generating hydropower with their little farm dams, right? I mean, so they've got a lot to lose. Not only the water for their crops, but they're also making money, wielding power.
So what Margot's talking about is something else that I did, because I did a lot of research on Grand Coulee and the effects of it and the things that have been going on. And one of the things I found, and I'm sure you already knew this, was that farmers not only could generate enough water to water all their fields, they could generate enough water through their irrigation ditches to put up more dams along the irrigation ditches, which would generate power that they could sell off to surrounding communities. And some of those farmers were actually making more money off generating power from those dams than they were actually making off of their farms. So it's kind of a byproduct of the irrigation coming out of Grand Coulee. So
damn. And we still don't get any fish.
We still don't get any
salmon.
Fish. Golly.
Still got to go over to Costco. No, we get our salmon from
Colville.
From Colville. Shout out to I won't say who delivers my salmon.
No. Theoretically, they might be called.
Hey, I'm a Tenasket.
Right,
I'm more Colville than I am Spokane. But
all right.
Anyway, shout out to Mike. Our Mike Simpson, and we'll be looking forward and following up on those efforts. Also, and Orion Donovan Smith at the Spokesman Review, for getting that interview. Shout out to Orion.
Yeah, that's good. I'm happy that they're covering that Spokesman Review. So, moving right along, we have a story that kind of switches gears. This is kind of a tough one. This comes out of NPR, and there's a link to this actual audio of this. So if you want to listen to it, you can check this one out.
So we've been tracking the human trafficking crisis in Indian country, and this NPR story really does a good job at explaining how it increases the urgency during a pandemic. So we have a story here. 2019, Melina Richards got a call that made her stomach sink. One of her best friend's teenage daughters had gone missing on the Rosebud Reservation. It took police several days to organize a formal search party because they kept getting tips that she had been seen in various parts of the vast 1,900 square mile reservation in one of the most isolated parts of the lower 48 states. All the leads. They didn't find her, Richard said, choking back tears as she recalled trauma of that July day. Richard ended up to be a 6-person search team on ATVs. They found Wainayato Rose Loveswar, whose English name was Autumn. She was dead at the age of 19. So, Richards had already feared the worst. It was in the back of their minds, growing up here. Nobody knows how many indigenous people go missing or murdered every year. There's not a lot of comprehensive data. But on a lot of the large land-based reservations, such as the Rosebud, tribal members are convinced the crisis is worsening every day. Tribal governments are renewing pressures on the federal and state authorities to devote more resources to the crisis, and there are signs that it's starting to happen. So this NPR story really talks about the crisis and how a huge number of 15 people went missing in just the last recent period of time, and what's going on. I know it's lack of law enforcement. It's tough to provide law enforcement over a large land base, but Indian country struggling in a lot of ways.
And I had one of the things I've never understood about this. Well, first of all, this story actually, so it talks about in summer 2019, but this story broke on March 12th of this year, and it came out on All Things Considered, which is an NPR show, so you could check that out. But one thing that I've always wondered about that is if we look at our law enforcement, where do we get our law enforcement from? We get it from our tax dollars. If we get a law enforcement from our tax dollars and these pipeline communities, whether it's gas or oil or frackers, whatever they're doing, how are they not paying taxes to have more law enforcement out there in these areas? You know, when you're talking billions of dollars, billions and billions, there should be plenty of law enforcement to cover these rural areas, but it's not happening, and this problem's not going away because of a pandemic. Yeah, there was some laws that were passed, and yeah, we have some investigators, but we are still we're still suffering. This is still happening all throughout the United States and in First Nations. It's actually a problem that's in pretty much every indigenous community around the world. But here we have passed legislation. There's people that are getting funded to work on this stuff, but it's such a small amount. You know, you're only talking 2 representatives for an entire state to go out and research these in Washington. I think Montana has a similar one, and I think I heard North Dakota has had blowback. I'll have to look into that, but you know, it's sad. North Dakota, South Dakota, Montana, Idaho, Oregon, Washington, Montana, Alaska are all hit really hard with this, really hard. The numbers are astronomical. The numbers are unbelievable. We should compile a list of some of those numbers, because I know in Washington State over the last year and a half, the number's like 400 and some. And it's like, wow, really? If they're, you know, and again, I have to go back to that one non-native lady that got lost in the park in Hawaii. There were hundreds of people that went out looking for her for a couple of weeks. One woman. We're talking hundreds of them, and we can't get law enforcement to go out and look for them. And it's really, in a lot of ways, it's gross.
Yeah, so Jeff, I think you've identified it's a breakdown in the system. You know, as Jeff mentioned, we have a number of laws, Savannah's Act and Invisible No More, that representatives like Deborah Holland have advocated for. So we have Congress getting after people, and there's, you know, congressional hearings and testimony. U.S. Attorney's Office are now stepping up, and they are prosecuting cases. So we have the prosecutions. You know, we're training our young women, you know, not to go out without their cell phones, or not to tell, you know, not to catch rides, or to let people know where they're going. So we're training our young women. I've done a number of trainings at the Healing Lodge. I'm on a task force here in Spokane. But you hit a key point: law enforcement. We really need to fund law enforcement. You have 1 or 2 officers on, and it's a 1.2 million acres, or if you're talking about Yakama Reservation, 1.4 million acres on the Colville Indian Reservation. They're large land-based tribes, and we need more law enforcement. We send our guys down to FLETC, the Federal Law Enforcement Training Academy, and then they get hired away because we can't pay them enough.
Yeah, it's sad. You know, there's so many of these that are, when they're so rural, you would think that they could focus on these efforts when they know that they're going to have these man camps going up, because that's a big problem. Man camps are one of the main reasons that the Standing Rock effort was even formed, was because of the man camps. The drugs, the sex trafficking, all of that has such a negative impact on the communities, and those kids down there were fighting that, and you know, it was a big part of why they didn't want that to happen. Yet it's still going on. It's still happening. We hear stories every day. If you're not familiar, you can get on Facebook. There's at least half a dozen missing and murdered Indigenous women, missing and murdered Indigenous men, missing and murdered Indigenous people, Facebook pages that you can check out all the people that are going missing. And it's neat. You know, every now and then they'll post when someone's found.
So just recently, just recently, Patty Ghosh from the Washington State Patrol, and also Spokane tribal citizen Don Pullen, who is also a tribal liaison here in Eastern Washington, they released the names of folks that have gone missing.
Yeah.
So those tribal liaisons are working hard with law enforcement to identify people that are actually missing. Some of these multiple calls are runaways, and yes, we want them found and tracked down. But folks that are really missing, if you can identify those individuals, then law enforcement can do the investigations, the deep dive, the investigations that need to be done.
Yeah, it's so important. You know, we look at our communities, we're already burdened by so many other things beyond this. And it's just like, it all creates and perpetuates the whole intergenerational trauma thing, and it's just hard.
And taxes, Jeff, you're exactly right. Our fuel tax dollars, when you buy gas at the Indian Reservation, whether it's Spoko or whichever, we have a fuel tax agreement with the state, and our tax dollars, that revenue, goes for law enforcement and roads. So we're paying our way. We're paying for our law enforcement. We have business and enterprise. We're not asking for the federal government just to dole it out. We're providing law enforcement for our people.
Yeah, and I know another part of this whole problem, this whole epidemic, if you will, of the missing and murdered indigenous people. It's not just women; it's men and women. It's boys and girls. Part of that is that they have jurisdictional issues where they're not prosecuting for crimes, and when you have non-natives that go on the reservation and know they can't be prosecuted, they develop a mentality that they're just not, they can do whatever they want.
It emboldens them, really.
It does.
We better keep moving along, Jeff.
Well, I wanted you to talk a little bit about that, because I know it's important, and a lot of people don't understand that's part of the big problem of all that. When we start looking at the statistics, it's really frustrating to watch when we arrest people and have to escort them to the edge of the reservation because we can't prosecute them.
So the Supreme Court case Oliphant said that we do not have jurisdiction over non-Indians. We have jurisdiction over our tribal members and folks from other tribes, but non-natives we do not have criminal jurisdiction over. So we often have to call the local sheriff. We have to call people in to prosecute those individuals. And then again, if it's a major crime, if it's murder, rape, or arson, then we've got to call the U.S. Attorney's Office and the FBI to do those investigations.
And so now I know that you did time as the attorney, and you worked with the U.S. Attorney's Office on some of these cases, and what was happening when you...
So I received declination letters, myself and my colleagues, my boss, or whoever.
And what is a declination letter?
So they declined to prosecute cases in Indian country. There were violent crimes, rape, sodomy, molestation, and the U.S. Attorney's Office often declined to prosecute those cases. We worked hard to improve our law and order codes, to work with Casey Family Partners, which provide forensic interviews, to make sure we had solid cases that they could prosecute, and still we got declination letters. But today, I think the U.S. Attorney's Office are working harder to prosecute some of those cases. But it's because we took to the streets. It's because women and our communities have been protesting, wearing our red skirts, calling attention and awareness to this issue.
Yeah. Hashtag Red Skirt Society. Yeah, definitely check out those guys and gals. Didn't see any guys in skirts, but there were guys. They're supporting the gals in skirts. So
we can make that happen.
We
want to make a turn. We want to give a shout out to White Swan based the Black Lodge Singers celebrating another Grammy nomination. So this is from the Yakama Herald. Erwin Scabby Robe remembers being in the audience at the Grammy Awards in 2001. An album by his family drum group, the Black Lodge Singers, was nominated, and members attending were seated near the stage. That was the first year they were on national television. Thanks to sitting close to the front, it was unexpected and a little surreal, but they were there among some of their most favorite fellow artists. It was so great. He said it was really an honor to be down there sitting with everybody. Erwin Scabby Robe said it was kind of overwhelming and hard to explain, and the feeling, it was humbling. So again, the Black Lodge Singers, one of our own tribal drum groups, founded in 1980 by his parents, Kenny and Louise Scabby Robe of White Swan. They've been nominated for another Grammy. The 63rd Annual Grammy Awards was last night at 5 p.m. Trevor Noah was hosting the event, and it couldn't really take place in person because of the pandemic, but there were 83 categories in the Black Lodge Singers album My Relatives. Nikoso Kowaks, I'm sorry about that. I apologize. It is one of 5 nominated for Best Regional Roots Music Album. It's the subgenre of the American Roots music field, which includes Americana, bluegrass, folk, and regional roots. Yeah, so thanks for Yakama Herald for running that story.
Yeah. If you haven't heard the Black Lodge Singers, check them out. I'm sure you can find them on YouTube. We'll leave a link to that story again in the comment section below. They rock the house. I've heard them many times, and they're definitely one of my favorites. So, moving right along, we have one last story, and the story it's a pretty good story. It's on our good old buddy Martin Scorsese. Martin Scorsese here. He announces Indigenous cast members for Killers of the Flower Moon. This one came out by Shannon Shaw Duty on March 11th, and this article came from Osage News. The wait is over. For months, Osage tribal members have wondered who will portray Molly Burkhart's mother and three sisters in Martin Scorsese's upcoming film, Killers of the Flower Moon. On Thursday, Apple Original Films exclusively announced to Osage News that Indigenous actresses Tonto Cardinal, Cara Jade Myers, Janae Collins, and Jillian Dillon will portray Lizzie Kyle, Anna Brown, Rita Smith, and Minnie Smith. The four actresses will portray four Osage women who were murdered in the 1920s during the Osage Reign of Terror, a period of time when Osages were systematically killed for their oil wealth or inheritance. Killers of the Flower Moon is based on David Grann's best-selling book by the same name. The book unveils a dark period in U.S. history when greed and evil surround the Osage. The film's lead actress is Lily Gladstone. She's a Blackfeet Nez Perce who will portray Molly Burkhart. Leonardo DiCaprio is the lead actor and will portray Molly's white husband, Ernest Burkhart. Robert De Niro will portray the main villain, Ernest's Uncle William Bill Hale. Jesse Plemons will portray Tom White, the Texas Ranger sent to investigate the murders on the reservation. White and his team of undercover agents become the first agents of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. No one outside the film production has seen the screenplay for the film, but if the film is anything like Grann's book, the storyline will center around Molly and her family. That is really super exciting. Kind of zoom in a little bit on that picture there. One of the most exciting parts of this is that we had worked with Lily Gladstone a little bit, and in the One Heart Native American Arts and Film Festival, she was an instrumental part of that, and now she's going to be working with some guy named Leonardo. So that's really exciting.
Leonardo DiCaprio, holy cow, and
Robert,
De Niro.
Yeah, Bobby Money.
Oh my God, that's amazing. Robert De Niro.
That's very cool.
Scorsese, man, I've got to get that flower. What's the name of it? Killers of the Flower Moon. Of course, I'm familiar a little bit with the story. There were Native Americans that had oil rights from the Osage Nation, and there were Suyapis that were marrying into the family and killing off the family so they could just get those riches. And it's just shocking. I'm going to get that book on my Audible. So when we're driving, I can at least hear the original story. But Scorsese's doing it. Wow. And Tantu Cardinal, she's amazing. She... Jerry Croce reached out to her, and she did part of our graduation announcement for Native students last year. So
at Eastern Washington.
Yeah, at EWU. Yeah, she was great. So we appreciate Tantu's work.
And what is a Suyapi?
It's a Caucasian, non-Indian, upside down face. So when we first...
in Salish.
It
translates. It's Salish. It translates to upside down face.
Because the first contact were with fur trappers, and they were kind of bald up here and bearded down here. So Suyapis is upside down face.
All right. Yeah, for those of you that don't know.
Your little Salish lesson.
Yeah.
And we just want to thank you guys for joining us. It's exciting to see the things that are happening in Indian country. Again, if you have stories, please reach out. Let us know. Like and subscribe. That's what keeps us going. Just like and subscribe.
Yeah, we're almost to 500 subscribers.
Yeah.
That's cool. That's a milestone.
Send the link to your friends. Get them to like and subscribe. And we'll keep covering stories that are important to you. So, Lem Lemp, She Uhoy.
Happy Monday.